Hey everybody, Phil here with another tutorial. This one's kind of interesting. We're kind of building on what I've been talking about the last couple of weeks. You know, the first week I did this thing about Tabulator, which you guys really seem to love because, yeah, Tabulator is pretty effing cool. And then the next week I did this thing about Chartkick and Stimulus. And some people commented on the Tabulator video, you know, let's see more about Tabulator. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to dig into Tabulator a little bit more, but I'm also going to hook it up to Stimulus so we can see how we can get even more of our JavaScript off the page and into Stimulus controllers. So let's dive into it. Okay guys, let's switch over to the computer because I don't particularly like the way that this camera looks. And let's talk about what it is that we're going to do. So last time we had done the Chartkick, as I said, with Stimulus. But let's, if my notes help me enough, I may have to do this again. Let's take a look at using Tabulator. So we've got this thing, if you remember, it was the chart that you could filter. And this is not Tabulator, right? If you remember, it's just, I'm just doing this rendering the purchase and it's a table. It's an actual real life table. So what we want to do, of course, is change that to be Tabulator. So what's the first thing we need to do? And we're going to hook it up to Stimulus, and we're going to use the same Stimulus controller. Some of you recoil in horror, because in theory we could do the same kind of linking up of using chart to tickle the Tabulator table. So the first thing we're going to do is we'll put in a new, come on, it's very ambitious, this Copilot from GitHub. So let's do a div here, and we want to do the same thing. So it's a data, and we're using purchases chart is the name of our controller, and we're going to set a target of table. So some of this might be familiar to you, and we want the classes. This microphone's really bothering me. We're going to use these same kind of classes here. Chuck those on. Okay, and don't have a lot of space. Okay, so we don't need any of this. Let's just hide it for now. And we go back and we don't have a table. And let's bring up our inspector. And he's over there. Let's bring him back to the bottom. So first thing we did is we made this a target. We'll leave it a table, and so we want purchases chart controller, which is here, and so let's add a new target in there of table. And the other things that we're going to do, I'm taking a lot of this actually from Zonmaster, which is, if you don't know, it's my software as a service place for Amazon sellers, and busy upgrading that to Rails 7 and doing all this coolness. So we're going to add a data source, which is a string. We're going to add a place to store Tabulator table, which is an object. Haha, Copilot got it wrong. And for now, I don't think I need an action URL. So what I'm going to do is just copy over some stuff to initialize a Tabulator table. So I'm going to bring this over, and we'll see here. So this is the way you would do it in normal JavaScript, right? I think I did this. This is from the Tabulator demo video. So we got this, you know, we find the thing that the div that we're tying this to, and then we set up all of our gubbins for Tabulator, and we're doing all that, as you can see at the bottom of index html.erb, and we're doing stuff like that. So that is one way you can do it, but we want to use Stimulus. So what we can do is essentially take all of that same code, and instead what we do is put it on inside of our connect. Thank you. So we're taking the table target, which is we're setting up here. Hopefully you know enough about stimulus. Sorry, this isn't really intro to stimulus. So we set a target. If you remember over here, not there, over here I said data purchases chart, this is the name of the controller, and the target, the name of the is table. So we're setting a target called table, and we pull that in by saying table target, camel cased. Don't get me started on casing and stimulus. That's the thing we want to make a tabulator table, and we're going to set it to be a data fill. Set a page size of 25. Don't really need that stuff. I'm doing this to make it compatible with the way data tables used to work. I guess I could get rid of it, but yeah, what does it matter? And then data source value. Where do we want to pull in the data from? So we're not going to have any data. That's not going to work right now because I haven't set it. But let's go over and see if we can see something. And yes, we can see that it's connected because it hasn't worked. And it's like, oh, tabulator is not defined because I haven't added tabulator actually to this yet. So how do we add tabulator? If you recall, we do that by yarn. First we do yarn tabulator tables. Now we'll go and download the yarn package. And then this is exactly the same as just adding tabulator. So yes, I'm running over it again, but that doesn't hurt. And then application.js, what we want to do is pull in tabulator. Okay, right, so we're going to do that. We're going to pull in tabulator, and then we're going to assign it to the window so that we can use it. So that pulls in tabulator. Oh yeah, we need to pull in the CSS. So let's look at the CSS. There we go. Application Bootstrap CSS. We're adding this. I'm using Bootstrap. Yes, I'm a Bootstrap person. So this will pull the CSS file out of the node module that you installed just now with yarn. So if we go and take a look over here, we can see that it's compiled our application.js and the Bootstrap, and we don't seem to have any errors. So in theory, when we refresh, we won't get any errors down here, and you can see this is the footer from tabulator. So we know that somewhere in here there is a tabulator object without any data. So let's get some data in there. We don't need these things. I think for now we're done with those. So let's set a data source value. Where is that again? Where the best. So we have this div, just to recap where we were last time with Chartkick. We have this outer div, which is around everything, and that's tying the data controller into everything inside, or exposing that controller to everything inside. So here we've set chart ID value and those chart things, but now we want to add something for the so purchases for tabulator. So purchases chart, and what do we? It's data source value, and let's do. I think we had this before. Purchases, purchase data. And if we go and look at our purchases controller, Rails controller, we had this purchases data, and that's what was filling in the data from the other one. Right, you know, this is the date filter and all that other stuff. So we've done all that. So now we simply need to have different ways of sending it back. And we were already doing format.js with the other way of doing Chartkick, and just in case we want to go back, we'll leave that. And what we are going to do is format.json. And we're going to render JSON, and the data inside there will be purchases. And this we know from all the other things of doing Tabulator. What I like about moving this stuff into Stimulus is really you're leaving the JavaScript alone. You're just moving it into a different location. Everything that we did in JavaScript for Tabulator in that other demo, we can do it, just move it inside of a Stimulus controller. There's some minor changes. And then you end up with a much cleaner HTML file and kind of a compartmentalized JavaScript, which is much easier to handle than having just JavaScript everywhere. So we've chucked all that in there. It says I should do that. Is that what it's saying? Yes, there we go. So we've done that. So now, okay, I've done the purchases data, made it respond to JSON. Who's JSON? And we've added the data source value of purchases purchase data. And in the controller, because we say Ajax URL is data source value, everything should work. I know it won't, because that's the way my life is. But here we go. Error. 500 error. That's good news. 500 error means that we're actually calling the right thing. We go over here, we can see that it started to get purchases data. So it's hitting purchases data. That's fine. And I've got a bug in there on line 9. And I know exactly what the bug is. It's here. If there's a date filter. I'm just assuming that there's always a date filter. I could actually, I'm doing that 2 times here. Whew. So we can do this if date filter is present. Get a date time out of it and filter. So now we can go back, we can refresh. It means that we haven't finished setting up our table, have we? We don't have any columns. I think that that's what it's talking about. So how do we do the columns? This is always a bit of a pain, even with Copilot. Now, first of all, what are the columns on purchase? We don't know. So we could go and figure it out and look at the other things, but what I like to do is add annotate. Stop this for now. Bundle. Oh, make this a bit bigger for you guys. Deal with this ridiculousness. Why does it do that? Okay, make it a bit bigger. Let's bundle. We're going to add the annotate gem, which I talk about so many times on this channel. And then we're going to just run annotate. Models, I think. There we go. And now we have all of our columns up here. Isn't that handy? So we can take everything. Watch this. If this works the way it did yesterday, it's pretty cool. We only want, well, we'll take those. We want those ones. And I'm just going to paste this text in. Watch this. Paste this text in. I don't want created at and updated at. And let's see if it works. Watch. Look at this. Title. ID. Good. Next one. Item name. Field item name. This is Copilot. It's reading ahead and figuring out that maybe you want to see all this stuff. Purchase at, status, customer ID, and description. That is so cool. And it knows that I'm doing it for Tabulator, so it actually sets it up for Tabulator. And it's going to hide the ID, which is fine. We might want to see that, but let's bring this down. And let's start the server again. Are my videos too long and boring? You can tell me honestly. Well, no, don't tell me honestly. But there we go. It's going to go off. And do we still have that error? Maybe that's not quite the right thing that we want to do. Yeah, that was silly. See, I was trying to be too clever. Remember, I removed this pagination stuff. Pagination mode remote. There we go. If you're not doing pagination, then you don't have the data housed in a data thing. You just return the data only. But because we're doing remote pagination. So in other words, if I get rid of this, if I'm not doing remote pagination, then in purchases controller, I just return purchases, he says. Yeah. So, and we'll let Tabulator do its own pagination for us. How's that? Okay, so here's all the data. If I hadn't blabbed so much and whatever, it took about 5 minutes. It takes me 20 minutes. It took about 5 minutes to move that from doing it as a table into a tabulator and pulling the data remotely, just like I was. Even better than I was before, actually, because I was loading it on the page. So great. Let's do some cool stuff here just to make it look nicer while I'm here. So, like the purchase amount, I believe formatter of money. And we'll let Copilot do it for us. So we've got that, and we don't really need the customer ID at this point. There we go. Purchase amount. So there, we've moved everything into a stimulus controller. So let's talk a little bit more about the other things that we can do with Tabulator. First one that I know you guys are quite interested in is doing inline editing and how that works with Rails. Of course, everybody, you can go and look at the Tabulator thing and they show you how the demo. It's very easy to add inline editing. You simply, I think, add editor. So let's say we wanted to change the quantity. We can say an editor of number. And now when we click on quantity, yeah, we can change the thing. That's great. But how do we actually save that change? That's the thing. That's what we're here to learn, right? So that's what we need to figure out. And so what we do is we listen to events. And this is something, again, we set up when we set up the table. So we've set up the table here. So now on the table, Tabulator table, not set data. We want to say on the cell edited. Copilot's smart enough to know that. We're going to get the row. So Copilot's not quite right here. We're going to say const of data and get the whole row's data, right? That's one thing that I love about Tabulator is the way you can access the data. So we're not just going to get that piece that's changed. We're going to get all of it, and I'll show you why. So let's take a console log here of the data, and we're just going to end that for now and just leave it like that. So let's refresh. Let's edit a value. And we can see, so here we're getting, it's the whole record, you know. It's the whole record. So the reason we want the whole record and not just the thing that changed is that we want to send that out to Rails. So we can do a fetch, and we'll do purchases plus data ID. I don't know what that's doing there, like that. So that will send a fetch, but of course we need a method of patch, and we need some, well, we need a method of patch. Let's just start with that, and we'll do a body of JSON stringify the data. So that will send all of this down. Let's reload it and take a look. We're going to just zero out the log on the server so we can see more clearly what's happening. I'm going to send that, hit return. We get a 404 not found. So the action update could not be found for purchases controller. I know I'm going a bit fast. I had 2 coffees this morning. So where is purchases controller? Oh yeah, dummy. Def update. Now we can just let it write a standard update for us, right? Purchase params. Well, we can just do, yeah, purchase params. Update. Always use the bang ones. So let's try that again. We should be able to just edit because, okay, now we're getting a 422, and that's we don't have an authenticity token. Now, I'm not using Rails UGS and all that other stuff. So how do we deal with this CSRF stuff? Let's take a look. What we need to do, okay, we're done with you, done with the purchase. We don't need this anymore. Actually, while we're at the index, let's go back to the index. I'm confident now that I know what I'm doing. I'm going to take away this tail stuff just to make it a little bit neater. Okay, so how do we get the CSRF? So here's what I do. First of all, I create a new file of helpers.js. Now this is something I have across all my apps. So I'm going to do a bit of copy and paste here, if you don't mind, and I'll talk you through it. I've got these 2 functions. Get meta value, and it goes, so basically you can say, give me this meta value, which is where Rails puts the CSRF on the page. So any meta value, go out and find it for me. And we have a find element that goes and looks on the page and looks for that element. And in this case, we're going to say for a meta value, of course, we want to find something in the document head, and it should be defined by meta name equals name, and then return that the content of that element. So we've got these 2 things. So how do we use these? Now I've saved my helper.js. It might even compile it. No, it doesn't compile it because I haven't referenced it. So we want to use it in this controller. So let's import the get meta value there from helper. And that's, okay, I was really maybe too fast there for that, but this is how you add new functionality into your stimulus controllers. You can write into another file, export the function, and then just import the function into the specific controllers that you need to use it from. So here's get meta value. And of course what we need is a header, right? Headers even. And hopeless. Headers. That's why I have Copilot, because my typing's so bad. I kind of do this with the letters. Sorry, folks. So we're going to save content type of JSON, because I think if we look, we aren't even requesting JSON. And the important thing is this. The CSRF token, we want to set it to be the get meta value of CSRF token. If you look on any page in Rails, let's view the page source. And up here in the header, there's the CSRF param and the CSRF token. And that's the token we need to send to Rails to say, we're legit. we're not doing nasty things, or we are doing nasty things, but you should let us do them. So now, if I go and change this value again, still get a 422 because I didn't load the page again. So let's load the page and do this. And well, before we do it, I'll just clear that. So we're going to set that to be 8. And we're getting a 500 error. And that's because what's purchase params? So what's purchase params? If you go back here, I say update from purchase params. Now when we create a scaffolded model, I don't know if I've done a scaffolded model in here. No. But you know, when you do a scaffolded model, you get a private, I think it's private, def, let's say purchase params. And that will be saying that inside of your params is a kind of sub data structure that is for the purchase object, and what values in there. You know, we have this whatever security that we say we can only take these params. So we don't want to update purchase stat. What we want to do is update quantity. What do we got on the page? I can imagine we would want to update quantity. I'm going to leave purchase amount, update status, and update description. So let's add status in here, and let's add description in here. So now we're pulling down. But you're saying, Phil, the params are all here. They're not, they are not as you expected. Now the interesting thing is, they are. Let's see what happens. That's not what I did in my test. So that's why I'm a bit, it's fascinating. Actually, this might be much cleverer than I gave it a chance to be. Let's refresh this page. Let's zip it out. Okay, we're going to change this to 8 again. And we don't get an error. It actually updated the quantity. Now this is fascinating because when I did my test, I had to do something funky. But you can see it's actually put everything inside of a purchase. I wonder how it did that. Because if we look here, it's just all top level. Isn't that interesting? I'll show you what I did because it might not work for you. I might have done something because I'm doing this again. Maybe something is stuck around. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rake assets clobber. Just in case. I have a horrible feeling that something might have stuck around. So let me just try it again. Reload the page. Because it definitely worked, because it's now up to 8. So let's set this one to 7. No, it actually works. Somehow it is smart enough to know to put that in there. If you do it and it's not smart enough, I'll show you what I did in my other example. What I did is I pulled down the data and I put it inside of the object, and then I sent purchase params. So let's see the difference. If I load it again and do that, and now we look, you see, I think that's better. Because this way, up here, everything was duplicated. See, you have ID, well, item name, quantity, purchase amount. So something is clever enough to send it twice, but you do have twice the data, whereas if you do it by hand, you have everything inside once, and just the ID is sticking out. Up to you. I think this is cleaner myself, but you may prefer the other way. The other way, you have a risk of using the params from out here as opposed to the access controlled, or whatever we call it in Rails, things down here. Either way, the quantity is updated. And if I add an editor, now we can go back and add some other editors on here. Like on description, we just want to call editor input. Oh, text area. Is there really an editor called text area? I don't think so. Holy manoli. So this is awesome. No, I used awesome already. This is great because we can write something really long, even with line breaks. How's that? And then, I don't know how you submit it. Done. And it sends it over. Yeah, this is great because we can write something really long, even with line breaks. There it is there. So it's updated that. And then the other thing, what did I say? Status. Now, editor, as it's suggesting, this thing is sometimes too clever for its own good. We can use a select. And there's two ways you can do a select. You can say, you know, just here's the list of things that you could select from. So if we refresh the page, I click on this, you can see I've got a choice of these. That's nice. You can do it that way. Or the other way is to let it figure it out by itself from the values that are in there. I personally think that the handing over a specific set is much better because we have control over the front and the back. If this was values that could be user generated that you weren't really sure, list on, no, what is it? Values lookup, that's it. Values lookup true. And so if you're letting a user enter data, you could just do this, which is have it look from the existing values, and you see it's looking at all the possible values in this column and saying here's what they are. Personally, my preference is to actually give a discrete list of things. But if we change this first one, so Rust Copper shirt, 7 of them delivered, and you can see it sent it out. And there was a status, if we look down here, delivered. And so this is now delivered. I refresh, and the status is delivered. So I think you get the idea. That's how you do updating with Tabulator. It's pretty sweet. I don't do a lot of that because a lot of our data is we're just showing, we're not letting people edit. But if you want to add editing, it's so simple. Again, like 5 minutes if I hadn't talked, 20 minutes if I talk. Gosh, I might be going too long for another video here. But I think what I want to do is just fix this, the filtering like we had done before, because my changes have made it so the filtering doesn't work. So what we had done before, where are you, is on Chartkick, and then when we click, it goes off, and then it loads the chart. And it loads the chart using this old way. You can see purchases chart, date filter, and sends it off. That's fine. But the data comes back, but we're no longer using that data. So if we look here, God, this is, okay. Let's pull it out, move it over. Oops. And we can see, oh, response. Response is a whole table, you know, it's an HTML page, and it's that we would have pulled out using Hotwire. So what we're going to do instead is we just want to have this table reload itself. And I'm just going to, oops, you don't need to see that. Let me just pull up the right thing here and show you how to do that. I could probably make videos all day long. I could just write a book on Tabulator and Rails, right? Okay, so we're going to do that same kind of filtering. So when we load the page, by default, we're just going to load in everything. You know, what's all that? Oh yeah, because if I click on this, it brings back another piece of the page. We're going to load in everything. So what we want to do is when we click, we just need to change this load chart. So the first thing we want to do is make sure we get the event, and then we want to event, yeah, we want to prevent the default. And we no longer need to do a fetch like this because we're not processing that ourselves. We have the tabulator table, we can say set data, and this will load, or just reload the table. Okay, there's one there. Okay, let's bring it back in. So we're still clicking, of course, but it's just calling tabulator set data. Just console log this so you can see for sure. Data filter value. Oh, it's not event. It's not like that at all, is it? So we're still doing the filter, and you can see that it's refreshing the whole table here. If we go over to the network, bring this thing up, you can see every time I click, we're adding another purchases data. Look at that, and you can see the responses, all of that. But in this particular case, what we want to do is not just, we need to pass the values that we're doing. So it's the same kind of thing. We have the data source value that we want to pull it down, and we want to pass the date filter. So let's refresh the page. Let's do this. Now if I click here, you can see that we did pass a date filter, and you can see that it actually has used it. And so we should be, I can't remember which one I clicked on. So I'm clicking on the 30th here, and so we can see that everything has been filtered. Close you. You can see I'm just got data for the 30th, just data for the 2nd. So we quickly changed that from using a fetch to using tabulator, still all inside the stimulus controller. I think it's pretty cool actually, but then I'm a bit nerdy. Yeah, there we go. So that's using those two together. Now, I think I did this already using the header menus. In the other one, the other thing that's kind of neat is if we want to have a kind of a chart in here. But how about I do another video all about Tabulator and charting, and the neat thing I've done, let me see if I can find it, is that you can actually put a Chartkick chart inside of a Tabulator cell. That takes some dancing, but we'll do that next time, and we'll look at how to use Tabulator's own built-in charting things to do some charting here. So hope you like this. This is cool for me. I love stimulus. I really do. I saw a comment on the interwebs about somebody said, oh, you don't need Hotwire and stimulus because you can do it all with jQuery. But it's like, you don't need a Lamborghini because you can drive in your Fiat 500. So just because you can do it doesn't mean that it's not good to switch to it. And I'm finding as we move ZonMaster over to Rails 7, it's so much cleaner because I bit the bullet and said, okay, you know what, I'm going to do everything in stimulus, or at least use stimulus controllers to get the JavaScript off the page. And it's just an amazing thing. So I'm not a React person. I don't like to use these other front-end frameworks because I think you can do so much with just the tools that were already given built in with Rails. I really sometimes wonder about the use of React. If you're doing the whole thing with React, that's a different story. But for people who are just chucking little bits on here, you can do so much dynamic content with the tools built into Rails. So simple, and none of the configuration issues. All right, made it through another video, 45 minutes. My neighbor seems to have stopped using this chainsaw while I did it, so thank you to him. And I'm still in Canada. A couple more weeks to go, and then I'll be back in Japan, bringing you more great content. Like, subscribe, bell notification. I've got my Substack down there. You guys have already clicked off because you're not watching the end. Nobody watches the end of videos. Substack down there. Yeah, whatever. Drop me a line if you feel like chatting about your Rails project or you want some help. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.